This is how the people of Rajasthan have been collecting rainwater for thousands of years. A growing population and the changing climate has put their way of life under threat. Join us on a journey to see if a charity called WaterHarvest can make a difference. Rajasthan's culture and people go back thousands of years. Long before the birth of Christ, this area of the world was ruled by wondrous empires. A land of tigers, elephants, beautiful fabrics, palaces and temples. Hinduism predates all other religions, and its teachings are enshrined in the traditions and ways of life. In Rajasthan, the people have lived happy and content lives all this time, but water is sacred. It falls during the monsoon season only 3 months each year. During this time, families use innovative and traditional methods to capture rainwater and store it for the following 9 months. However, the changing climate and the population boom seen across the world is putting this way of life and their fragile culture at risk. Erratic monsoon seasons leave families without sufficient water, forcing women and children to walk up to 6 hours a day for water from ground wells, whilst the men leave for weeks at a time for wage labour in poor conditions. These people are not refugees, affected by war, nor afflicted by disease. They are simply locked into a poverty cycle through lack of clean drinking water. In order to preserve one of the world's most beautiful and oldest cultures, it is in our power to help them adapt their traditional rainwater harvesting methods and return them to a happy and sustainable life. So we arrived in India and we're in the northwest of the country in Rajasthan. A land of colourful culture, but the land is also, it has a sacred and intrinsic respect for its water. I'm Tim Good, I'm from a foundation in the UK. We want to support this cause and we want to work with WaterHarvest, but in order to do that we take a bit of a business approach. Our foundation is funded and formed through our family business, and we want to make sure that any money that we put into this cause is going to the right place and making the right impacts. A lot of the region is desert and people treat water almost like they do a god.
There are many step wells. Basically step wells are, I always say, they are inverted temples, So you go down and worship water. In temples you go up and worship God. So see, water in these dry lands were very well respected, It's a blue gold, You can see it right now, what the relationship and respect as of today is, There is lots of dirt, and water is not clean. And maybe changing technology, changing advancement, people are getting, not respecting their water sources.
Yeah, because now they just turn on the tap in the cities and
you can get water.
Whereas out in the countryside, the respect of the water is still there,
it's still there,
they appreciate
as compared to the cities, And I think one thing, which we always say that as modernization, or technological advancement are coming up, water has become a commodity, And earlier, it was not a commodity. It was taken as a God's gift, or it was worshipped, And especially step wells are one of the water infrastructure where you can see it's worshipped,
Yeah. The people here have been capturing water traditionally and storing it, and that's been perfectly sustainable in their way of life. So now with these changes, that is completely under threat. If you donate money to WaterHarvest, fine, it goes into this pot, and they say that 80p of every pound goes on the ground, but that's no good unless the person on the ground working in India is really passionate and really kind of lives the culture and the importance of, and understands the importance of water in the region. So these are all the types of things that we're looking at. We're making a film for this, is to help our own process in the foundation to understand what we're doing and whether or not in the future this is the right cause for us to support. So we'll go through over the next week, we'll visit all the different regions, look at the sort of water harvesting techniques that are used to capture rainfall, to use groundwater, and also the storage, and come out of the end of this week to see if we feel it's effective, and also to make sure that we feel that the money that we're putting forward is being really well used. We're pretty far out into the desert at the moment, and the villages we drive past have a lot of traditional tankers. So this is the tanker, and this is the catchment area. And it works well, but the tanks and the catchment areas that WaterHarvest put in are usually made of local materials, but either concrete or this with a hard packed covering of silt that doesn't allow water to percolate down. So if rainfall lands here, if it's light, it'll be lost. All the rainfall will go into the ground. If it's heavy, then about 40% of the water runs off and falls into the tank. But the ones that WaterHarvest put in would generally be much higher in terms of how much water actually reaches the tank. If it's like concrete, then you're going to probably get like 90% into the tank. So let's have a look and see kind of how they've made it. So it's kind of green, got a bit of sediment in. I mean, this is going to be way better than any well water. It's going to be fresh at least, but probably nowhere near as good as the water that they get from the WaterHarvest tanks, which are covered, and then they don't get a lot of silt and stuff pouring in. So we're here in a small village with a recent installation of a tanker and a catchment area, and then also the roof water capture. I will just do a short demonstration of how it will work here with using the pump and fill this up, and we'll see how it goes. So the rainwater goes into the guttering, goes into the strainer for the roof, then into the catchment area, and then into the tank at different points. And then of course, while it's raining, the most of the rainfall is going to land actually in the catchment area itself. So that is how they use the system to give the local people enough fresh drinking water for the entire season. The money raised by WaterHarvest in the UK, well, and internationally, isn't spent directly on projects on the ground. They don't have their own team here. So what they do is use due diligence to select partner organisations that are putting in place specific interactions to leverage the money in the best way. We've come here to one of the other partners of WaterHarvest, so they're taking us to a different region, a much drier region, and this partner is called Gravis. So they work in the same way. The money that comes from WaterHarvest goes into the partners, and the partners implement it on the ground. That WaterHarvest seems to not only be providing money, but they also seem to be providing some improvements. So we asked the question about how you work with WaterHarvest, whether they could improve something or vice versa, and they said, oh, WaterHarvest has actually provided some design improvements. I think there was a comment of a professor in the UK creating a different tanker design, that's the water tank design, and the way that the water gets into that. So that's something that we didn't really expect, that the WaterHarvest was actually providing technical assistance as well, whereas we thought they were more administration. The second one is WaterHarvest provides a percentage of the roof rainwater harvesting system, they don't just provide it all. So the family needs to contribute. So in this case, they say it's 70% provided, and the family has to provide 30%. So when we asked, well, do they have to pay that on time? Do they have to pay it up front? And they said, oh no, they don't pay it. They have to do it in kind. So basically, they calculate a monetary value on the labour to create the tank, and then the families or the community can help build the tanker. But having the buy-in from the actual household that the system is being installed, I think is really important, because they're committing a significant amount of time into this. It also links into the empowerment of the women, because really it's the women's decision to go ahead with this. They're the ones that are collecting the water, they're the ones that are going to benefit, and they're the ones that their time is saved. So yeah, it really links into empowerment of the family, but empowerment of the women particularly, given that the benefits are seen mostly by them, that then disseminates to the rest of the family and the community. The family here had the tanker for about 4 years. It filled with water entirely last year, but this season it only filled a little bit. They say that the quality of the water is significantly better. Yeah, it's working for them, but arguably the changing seasons are really difficult, and it's making it difficult to fill their tank this last year, whereas the year before they had it full. So I think it's something WaterHarvest is going to have to look at and try to adapt to changing seasonal patterns through global warming.
Climate change adaptation, which is a very hot topic as of now. See, dryland peoples were adapting to climate change for 5,000 years, and these small-scale water harvesting works which WaterHarvest is promoting is basically adaptation to climate change. So I think the whole world needs to learn these 45 ways and means to collect water as an adaptation to climate change.
So first rain of the trip. It's actually quite weird because it's not meant to be raining now. This is what we've been talking about, changing conditions. We've seen villages in certain areas have a big monsoon season, and then we've seen other villages only a few hundred kilometers further north not have anything, and it's all just a little out of sync. And I think this is the thing across the world, isn't it? Changing conditions everywhere. So yeah. We've just spent the afternoon with this family in the Thar Desert. That's the far northwest region of Rajasthan, which is the driest region. And as you can see, it's pretty much sand, it's pretty dry. Don't be misled by the greenery at the moment, because we're only 4 weeks out of the monsoon season. So this family has used traditional methods in terms of catchment areas into a tank before, but it still wasn't enough, and what ended up happening is that WaterHarvest helped them to create two. Now what they do is they have a much closer tank system just over my shoulder, about 200 yards away, and they fill both of them up in the monsoon season, and the cattle use the other one 2 kilometers away, whilst they use the one just near their house. So they seem to be doing really well, actually. So they've got the two systems, they're growing watermelons, they have got a fair amount of crops. I'm not entirely sure what they are, but they're in the backyard and they're ready to kind of process. But as a family, I think this is a good testament to what the water can bring. If you tick the box of the water, then everything else falls in place. So they're living sustainably, happy, and seem pretty healthy. There's 3 generations in this household. This is kind of the end of the trip, and we're seeing a different region, so it's more to the south now. And as you can see, there's quite a lot of greenery outside. There is more water here, but it's used in a slightly different way. This is a cash crop, not a subsistence crop. They're not going to sit and live eating chilies for their whole life. We actually tried some earlier, but yeah. Is that worse? No, it's not. It's not as hot, but it's still pretty hot. So this is a cash crop. They purely grow this for the sake of selling at the markets, and previously this wasn't possible because it would just take too much water. They would grow things for subsistence living and maybe some vegetables for selling. But what they would do is flood the entire field naturally, but then there'd be a lot of water loss down, which would take it away from their well that they use for other things. And then they would get a lot of weeds growing, which would take a lot of time to pick them out amongst all of the plants. So that what they're doing is WaterHarvest has helped their partners install these tubes, which is drip irrigation. And it's just gently dripping the water and getting the most out of the water, which means you get the plants growing without an awful lot of weeds in the middle, just a few small ones. He's got his whole family are working on this on a kind of rotational basis, and it's clearly enough for his family to survive on happily.
Very well. Very well. Good. Displays of
They seem to align their own values very much with the partners. They've spoken about being in this for life. Has already been working in this for over 20 years, and he sees it that he's going to see it through till he dies. And aligning their partner values with their own seems to be really important. The leveraging side was an important aspect for me and for our foundation, and probably for a lot of other donors as well. So that 80p in the pound does appear to go a lot further by working with the partners, working with the government, and basically creating additional donations on top of the money that is raised in the UK. So that's a big deal for us. In the finance process, that seems to be all in check. We went through their books, went through their cash accounts, and asked the difficult questions and put them on the spot. It's hard to ask these sort of questions either at the beginning of the trip or the end of the trip, because it kind of puts them on the spot, but you know, there's no other way of doing it. We have to do it this way and ask them difficult questions. But in this case, I'm pretty happy that the money that comes from the UK that goes into WaterHarvest in India is administered and put in the right place. So for us, WaterHarvest is an excellent choice as part of our philanthropic strategy. Not only are they bringing safe drinking water to the area of Rajasthan, but they're really supporting the future of the heritage, culture and traditions of these people. So many parts of the world have seen indigenous groups and indigenous cultures being lost to war, poverty and many other pressures. And in making this film, we hope that we'll be able to educate other foundations, donors and corporates about how to work with UK charities and NGOs internationally, as well as understanding WaterHarvest as a charity specifically. For us, WaterHarvest has excellent leadership on the ground in India to spend the money in the right place that is raised in the UK. Their governance and the way that they manage their money is also excellent. And finally, their impact is very high, using high leverage through government funding, education and many other small methods that we've highlighted in this film. Not only are they bringing safe drinking water to the people of Rajasthan now, they're protecting their culture, heritage and traditions that have been around for thousands of years. So we're really looking forward to seeing what WaterHarvest can do in the future with our help and potentially the help of many others in the UK.